It is indeed a very difficult task to speak after such a wonderful speech. There's absolutely nothing very different I can say, and I will definitely say much worse. But with the same good sport that our friends from the UK delegation, all of them English, are taking the remarks about the final of the Rugby World Cup, I will try to do my best myself. Mr. Director General again, honorable ministries and excellencies and distinguished delegates and observers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Over 13 years, 13 long years, 2 independently written economic analyses, 4 sessions of a multi-party study group, 2 committees of governmental experts with more than 50 states represented, thousands of hours of legal and economic analysis by some of the most important academics and best practitioners in the field, of thorough consultations with private sector, of detailed negotiations with government officials and members of international organizations, after the involvement of about 4,500 companies through the working group, the sacrifice of the honeymoon of a magnificent legal officer who intends only to marry once, and after 3 Secretary-Generals of UNIDROIT. After all of that, the day has come. The diplomatic conference starts today, and in 2 weeks, we, all of you here today, and more to come, can make history by finalizing and approving a treaty that has the potential to become a game changer for international economic transactions. Welcome to South Africa, welcome to Pretoria, welcome to the final stage of a long but fascinating process. What you achieve in these 2 weeks will be remembered, and your success will echo for a long time. This diplomatic conference is going to define a final shape of the 4th protocol to the Cape Town Convention on International Interests in Mobile Equipment, the new piece of one of the most successful commercial treaties in history. 79 contracting states and the European Union as a regional organization form part of a system that, considering only one of its protocols, has been able to register more than 1 million operations with an estimated value of collateral affected of more than $500 billion, a system whose effectiveness is proved by the widespread endorsement and active support of the world's most important international financial institution, an effectiveness that has been expressly acknowledged and quantified by the OECD through the Cape Town discount as a 10% discount for export credit agencies financing exports to a country that has ratified the convention. A system that counts on the open support of several committees of the United Nations, those concerned with economic growth and development. And these numbers, spectacular as they are, fall short of the potential effect of this new protocol. As you all know well, we are now concerned with mining, agriculture, and construction equipment, going to the core of 3 sectors which combined account for more than $100 billion a year of international trade. 3 economic sectors that only for the countries present in the conference reach 74.4 billion in imports and over 87 billion in exports. A recent independent economic analysis conducted considering only 63 member states of UNIDROIT has shown that over a period of 10 years, the stock of Mac equipment in developing economies will grow in over 90 billion USD with the ratification of the protocol, causing a potential increase in the GDP of the less developed markets of more than 23 billion USD and of 7 billion in the developed markets, often large exporters. This adds to an increase in general wealth of more than $30 billion, and the effect will be more naturally considering also non-UNIDROIT member states. But it is not only the numbers that matter this time. It is also the type of economy concerned by the treaty, whose final shape is in the hands of all of you. Mining, agriculture, and agriculture are primary economic sectors which form the basis for the economy of most developing and many middle-income nations of the world. Activities whose significance in a community often goes beyond the type of work, what citizens do when they raise up with the first light in every morning, to define the very social structure of a region and of a nation, and to affect also food security for those involved, but also for the entire world, as was mentioned before. Construction, on the other side, is the indispensable complement to these sectors, an activity that is necessary to vertebrate countries through infrastructures, that is responsible for housing and development of urban and rural areas, a type of activity that is, this time, key for all countries, but which again becomes all but a precondition for the full development of the less developed markets and societies. MAC, thus, goes to the very heart of development, and as such, is a necessary tool to achieve a more habitable, secure, fair world. Allow me for a second to focus on the soil that surrounds us. Allow me to focus on Africa briefly. Here, the MAC sectors are disproportionately important to the continent's overall economic prosperity as compared to the rest of the world. Agriculture represents over 16% of all sub-Saharan Africa's GDP, when the world average is 4%, so it's 4 times more. 16 of 25 of the world's states most dependent on mining sectors are in Africa. And the current financing gap for infrastructure in Africa, according to the African Development Bank, is valued at over $100 billion. So MAC is Africa. We have before us today a treaty that has the potential to substantially affect those economic sectors and therefore dozens of countries in Africa and beyond that need it most. The Cape Town system and MAC have the potential to create a unique legal framework that increases the availability of credit, that lowers the cost of the financing in those sectors where the credit gap is largest. Taking again a look on this continent, the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa has expressly stated that the scale of investment required in Africa makes reliance on domestic finance impossible. And MAC, as a system mainly originated with cross-border trading and investment in mind, has the potential, like no other system of rules, to foster international investment in equipment and more generally to facilitate private investment in areas where it is very scarce. And the real beauty of the Cape Town system is that jurisdictions can incorporate it at no or very little cost, and in a manner that is not legally disruptive, since it is not fundamentally aimed to substitute the national system of secure transactions at all, but rather to complement it. It becomes the perfect ally for export and import transactions, and moreover, it has the potential to generate a very healthy regulatory choice to parties at the domestic level, with the stakeholders involved, with users, manufacturers, suppliers and financiers deciding which system to use, deciding to structure their financing operation through their general domestic system, through Cape Town, or even through both. It adds a lot and takes away nothing. But all of the above will only be true if all of you here today manage to finish the job well, if the treaty is taken to its most adequate shape. The MAC protocol that is finalized here after these final weeks of work must be one which fully respects its principles: low cost, efficiency and legal certainty, clarity in the rights of the parties involved in the leasing and acquisition of MAC equipment, a good, efficient system of remedies with mechanisms of enforcement that better what the vast majority of countries have, and a clear system of priorities and protection for creditors where it really matters in case of insolvency of the debtor. In order to achieve these aims, delegates and experts need to escape the temptation of acting parochially, trying to force the inclusion in the protocol of solutions that look as much as possible as their own national system, just because it is their own. It takes courage, and it takes also humility. It takes for delegates and experts to accept that the solutions your national systems offer for your own country can be improved for other countries in general, but even, if you allow me, for your own, and especially for international investment and trade. The success of this treaty will also depend on the simplicity and its clarity. it will be necessary to avoid overcomplicating solutions, to try to cram in rules for situations that will only very rarely happen, remembering with Judge Wendell Holmes that hard cases make bad law, and that within limits, the struggle between avoiding complexity and achieving completeness should, perhaps in the max sector more than in others, be decided in favor of the former. Delegates and experts are invited to reflect twice before solving confronting views by simply including opt-outs for ratifying states. Too many opt-outs, a clear reflection of the lack of will to compromise, undermine legal certainty, increase complexity for those tasked with the institutional implementation of the Convention, and decrease the level of harmonization across borders, making the treaty less useful, making transaction costs in international investment higher. With these ideas in mind, talk, discuss, negotiate, find compromise solutions, having always in mind the best possible treaty, not the one that looks the most like you. All of us at the UNIDROIT Secretariat are here to facilitate this. This is our task, and we are prepared to work hand in hand with you, beyond sunset if necessary, although we hope it will not be, to finish the job. It is now time for me to finish. We live in a time when multilateralism is seen with suspicion in many parts of the world. By some joke of destiny, after 13 years, this diplomatic conference is happening with electoral processes underway in several parts of the world, involving the leadership and governance within many long-standing supporters of Cape Town, limiting their ability to commit at the end of this conference. And yet, we have here over 50 states, one of the most relevant regional organizations, and several of the most important financial organizations in the world. We have all we need to make this a success, to complete the work of so many years, honoring those whose hard work took us here. We have everything we need to help countries grow, to take the international legal scene to a whole new level. Let's seize the chance. Let's finish the job. Thank you.